and environmental impacts, including conducting a DEI survey and trying to recruit participants of diverse backgrounds and Spanish speakers. If anyone wants to get involved with the work or has suggestions, please reach out to us. We're very committed and excited for this work. We did want to make sure that as many people, and especially environmentalists, could benefit from this event because it is essential to equity that we recognize how the environmental movement has ignored and actively excluded indigenous people and their knowledge in its quest to conserve ecosystems. From its inception, it was based on the idea that there was a pristine nature to return to, when in fact all of the Americas belonged to the indigenous people, and all of the Americas were shaped by their historical tenure of the land. So there was never a pristine nature. And it has not been until recently that the environmental movement has begun to recognize and appreciate that indigenous people that make up 5% of the world, and probably more because there are nuances with what constitutes an indigenous person, but they are protecting at least 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. And so it's important that we start talking about that, recognizing that and honoring that and supporting the work that they're already doing. I'm getting my master's right now in natural resources, and it has not been until recently that I've noticed that environmental science is recognizing that indigenous traditional ecological knowledge is equally as effective at understanding and protecting our environment. And moreover, many sustainability and agricultural initiatives are drawing on traditional ecological knowledge because of its ability to employ a whole systems thinking and produce holistic benefits. So for that reason, the membership committee is very excited to host our national environmental and indigenous leader, Jim Denomie, to speak on the importance of traditional ecological knowledge, the indigenous history of the Great Lakes, and the indigenous struggle against fossil fuels in Wisconsin. And we are also very excited that he will speak on how environmentalists can support indigenous priorities in environmental work, because the environmental movement needs to integrate equity. And in order to do that, the first step is to listen to what communities want and are already doing. So before Jim speaks, I do want to thank our partners, the Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods, the Lake County Forest Preserves, Go Green Highland Park, and Go Green Northbook. This event could not have been possible without you. We all worked very hard to make sure that this event was shared with as many people as possible. We had up to 270 registrations, so thank you, everyone. Thank you audience for being here. Thank you partners for working with us. And we do want to give our partners a chance to speak and introduce themselves so they can also share information on the important work that they're doing in our local area. So we will first have Catherine Gaines speak from the Brushwood Center, and Rosemary will be unmuting everyone.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Katia, for organizing this, and to everyone who helped. I'm Catherine Game, Executive Director of Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods. We are thrilled to be a partner on this event. It's really important content for all the reasons you just mentioned. And we're featuring this as a part of our annual Smith Nature Symposium, which is a series of programs taking place through October. Which we want to share with you all. This includes our current art exhibition, which is called Third Coast Disrupted, Artists and Scientists on Climate, that explores the impacts of climate change in the Chicago region. You can book a tour online or request a private group tour, or just come and visit during open hours. Additionally, related to this, we invite you all to join the culminating symposium event, the award ceremony, hosted virtually on October 2nd, when we're honoring Winona LaDuke, Indigenous activist, for her environmental leadership and her work right now to stop Line 3, which is planned to go through Minnesota. You can learn more about all of these programs at brushwoodcenter.org, and I just want to thank you again.
Thank you for sharing. And now we're going to have Sarah Salto from the Lake County Forest Preserves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Salto, and I'm here representing the Lake County Forest Preserves, and we cannot be more proud to be sponsoring this program. At the district and its Dunn Museum, we are proud to support Indigenous efforts and have valued having a working relationship with Native people on our exhibits, programming, and more. We hope to continue developing these relationships and collaborations as we strive to provide access to quality program that is centered around Native voices. Tomorrow, we will be hosting Ojibwa writer and speaker Kim Sigafis in a virtual program titled Food and Gardening the Native Way. She will be sharing how Native gardeners have cultivated and grown crops and how organic gardening has its roots in Native culture. So we're really excited about that program tomorrow. If you are interested in that program, I don't know if I can put the registration link in the chat, but the registration closes tonight at midnight. So I will tell you how to get there in a minute. I also want to encourage everyone to please visit the Dunn Museum located in Libertyville to see our exhibit on the First People and the Potawatomi. And for any other additional programming, you can visit our Lake County Forest Preserve calendar and our website, which is also where you'll find the link to the Food and Gardening the Native Way, if you're interested. Thank you for your time and having us here, and I hope everyone enjoys this fabulous program. Thank you.
If you put the link in the chat to the hosts, then we can send it out to everyone.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Thank you so much. And now we have Jenny Futterman from Go Green Highland Park.
Hi, I'm Jenny Futterman from Go Green Highland Park. Thanks again to Sierra Club for inviting us. Very excited to partner with you guys. And we have a couple things going on in the future, which will be fun. We have been working in Highland Park on subscribing people to community solar and the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which hopefully will happen, or we can get some co-sponsors on that. We've worked really hard to reduce waste at our Food Truck Thursday and encourage proper waste diversion. We've done some work in our schools as well, also with zero waste lunches and diverting and making more compost and trying to get people to use it. And my husband Jay is in the Sierra Club chapter, and he does a lot of work on clean energy and electric vehicle education. So those are things we like to share in our community. And we're really excited to be a part of tonight's presentation because we're trying to expand all of our programming, and to be able to work with a larger group is great. And connecting our Go Green groups with the Sierra Club is a great way to get all these people showing up. So thanks again, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the talk.
Thank you so much to everyone. And also we have Marilyn Fish from Go Green Northbook here. We'll also be speaking.
Good evening. It's quite an honor to be here. We're very excited to be part of this wonderful program. Go Green Northbook has been working hard in multiple areas of improving the environment. One of the specialties that we have been working on is a project called TerraCycling. Many people can start TerraCycling projects if they choose to. They can Google that and start it for themselves. What we do is we have some bins at our village hall and at our train station where we are able to recycle things as toothbrushes and toothpaste tubes and lipstick containers and many other things that are not otherwise recyclable. We're very proud of this project. The other project that we have going is our Monarchs Milkweed and More. And that fits very much into putting us back into perhaps the type of environment that the indigenous people would have found in trying to encourage people to plant native plants, to take out some of their turf grass and help the monarchs, the other pollinators, and wildlife in general. We need to get back to a more natural way of living. If anybody is interested in any of our other projects, please feel free to check us out at gogreennorthbook.org. We would be happy to have you join us. We're excited about joining you tonight, and we look forward to the program. Thank you.
Thank you all the speakers for presenting. There is so much local environmental work going on, and we have really appreciated collaborating. And so if the partners want to share any links they would like us to share with the community, just direct message them to Gloria, me, or Rosemary. But now I want to present the guest of the hour, Jim Denomie, National Indigenous and Environmental Leader. Jim has comprehensive and varied experience with advancing Indigenous and environmental priorities from the local to the national level. So we are very fortunate to be able to hear him speak. Jim brings important scientific and environmental experience as he has served as the Deputy Director of the American Indian Science and Engineering Society at the University of Colorado Boulder, and he worked as an EPA subcommittee member representing the Midwest Alliance of Sovereign Tribes. Our speaker has also worked tirelessly to contribute to Indigenous causes, and he was on the advisory board of the American Indian Business Leader Program at the University of Montana, Missoula, in addition to being chairman of the International Institute of Wisconsin and president at the Mitchell Museum of the American Indian in Evanston, Illinois. Jim has shared his wisdom and reported on environmental and Indigenous causes for over 23 years, as he has served as host and co-producer from Voices from the Circle American Indian radio show, which was carried on nearly 200 stations in 36 states and in Guam, Australia, and Canada. Jim was also a reporter and producer for an Emmy Award-winning TV show called Outdoor Wisconsin, and there are more accolades on his CV that we could not cover. There's many more, but needless to say, we are very fortunate and excited to be able to hear Jim speak on traditional ecological knowledge and the Indigenous environmental struggle. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for being here.
Meg Rich, thank you. Just before we start, I would like to stop on one thing. I just wanted to show an image that I brought, and just to show where we all are, which I think would be very good. And so if our person in charge of those images can put that one up right now, because it had to do when I spoke at the Public Information Office at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California Institute of Technology. And it was for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in Pasadena, California. And it was pretty much, this was back in time a little bit there, and that's where we are. And right now, this image reveals a close-up look at all the planets in our solar system except for Pluto. And the images were taken by spacecraft developed and managed by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. And well, as we go through this, we're looking at Mercury, photographed by Mariner 10 in 1973, Venus, compiled by the Magellan radar mission in 1990-93, the Earth and Moon, taken by the Galileo spacecraft during its Earth 1 flyby in 1990, Mars, visited by the Viking mission in 1976, and Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, imaged by Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 from 1979 through 1989. So those is what we're looking for. And we're in there, and it's not just Earth and just the moon. We have all of these other factors. And what I would like to do is come back to me if I could. And just, okay, here we go. And we talked about my old friend Eddie Benton in December of last year. He did walk on to the other side. He took the path of souls, but he helped found the American Indian Movement Party in response to alleged police brutality against Indigenous people. And he died at a care center in Hayward, Wisconsin. He was 89 years old. He is Anishinaabe Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, by the way, is an umbrella term for Ojibwa or Chippewa, Potawatomi, and Ottawa tribes. Those three make up the Anishinaabe people. He was born and raised in the Lac Courte Reservation in northern Wisconsin. He made a life of connecting American Indians with their spirituality and promoting sovereignty, and was the Grand Chief or spiritual leader of the Three Fires Medewan Lodge. So it's a very, very heavy duty spiritual organization within tribal culture. And just so you know, here's what it looks. His big book is called the Mishomis Book. And that's his book, The Voice of the Ojibwe People. And it really taught a lot of the old ways to people who've really not had that experience in dealing with the elders. And so his book, the Mishomis Book, is touted as the first of its kind to offer Anishinaabe families an understanding of spiritual teaching. So he's a grand man. I've known him for decades, and it's sad to see him, but I will catch up to him according to our Ojibwe beliefs, our Chippewa beliefs. Couple of things you should know from sheer time and going back to ancient days, but actually coming up right up to today, is that there was a city in Illinois on the western edge, right along the Mississippi River, and it's called Cahokia. And it has been there for centuries, back in the days when Illinois had a tropical climate. And I know that might be difficult for many of us to believe. The state of Illinois has done a nice job of preserving the grounds of Cahokia. You can go on tours, and they have a giant pyramid there, and you can get up and walk right up on top of it, because it's not like the Egyptian pyramids. It's an edifice that's bigger than any of the Egyptian pyramids. Now, it's not the same thing. It's not a tomb where people were buried and honored. This was an element that I've been on top of it. You literally can go all the way up to the top of the pyramid, and that's where the main person lived, the leadership lived. And you can look right across the Mississippi, and the tip of your thumb looks like the Ark in St. Louis. So just to get you know how far you can see from the pyramid and the Cahokia Mounds. So that's very important. And if you have the opportunity, the state of Illinois has done a wonderful job of recreating a layout of what things used to look like in the tropical climate of Illinois. And I've just had a wonderful experience here, because my best friend on the planet is Barbara Jersey, and she's a member of the Menominee tribe of Wisconsin. If you want to come over, and she's giving me the big, no, I don't want to do that. But she is really wonderful, and she's one of the co-founders of the Menominee Community Organization of Chicago. So she keeps the urban people in touch with the tribal people up in Wisconsin, and we're keeping things alive. And we're doing it from our small home in Haynesville, Illinois, in Lake County, and they call it Lake County for a reason. We got an awful lot of them. We live right on Cranberry Lake. So that's what you should know about Cahokia, because again, it was an ancient culture and has even had a layout to look at the universe, a layout to look at the pyramids, and you can still go there today and check these things out. And we'll be dealing with the Manitous throughout today. And this is one of my heroes. It's called Manitous. These are what we call spirits or saints. And this is by Basil Johnson, a Canadian fellow, who also has taken the path of souls, but his work is really good. And if you want to know about spirituality, about the spirits and the spirit of Chippewa country, Ojibwe country, Potawatomi country, or Ottawa country, this would be the source to go to. So many of these things are very, very old. And I think that just wanted to talk about Barbara Jersey's tribe for a moment in Wisconsin. By the way, there are 6 tribes in Wisconsin, and there are more tribes and Indian people in the state of Wisconsin than in any state east of the Mississippi River. So it's, if you want to learn culture, it's there. All of the tribes are welcome you. They don't try to keep you away. They invite you in, and they try to make you and be good neighbors with you. So if what we're doing is that we're trying to learn American Indian tribal and scientific perspectives about what has happened to our Akikwe Dewezi, our Earth Mother who aches, she's in pain right now, And we will learn some things that we can do to help restore her. So that's what we're dealing with right now. So we have learning of the world we used to live in. We are all children of Akikwe, the Earth Woman. We are nourished by tradition, living close to the earth. We'll talk a little bit about 1491 BC, before Columbus. We'll talk about man's impact in the Americas. Our earth is sore. So Indian America in the 21st century with native roots, we'll talk about that and learn what you can do to help Earth Woman help us. So that's what we're trying to do. So I think I'm going to touch base on just our creation story a little bit from Eddie Benton Benet, a little bit. And to
Should I
begin with,
put the PowerPoint back up?
if you can,
Okay.
I'm not seeing it yet, but okay, now we can go to the next. Yeah, Mother Earth aches, and this is what we're talking about, how Native American has lived a life living close to Earth by adopting an eco-friendly approach of sustainability. We can learn tribal and scientific perspectives about what has happened to her and what you can do to help restore her. So if you can come back just a moment to me. This is what we'll be dealing with. Akikwe, Earth Woman, as a perspective, what to do to help her. And there are other elements that we will tick into as we go along. Now, the moon, the sun is grandpa, and he's called Jesus. However, the moon is grandma Nibagesus, or the night sun. And I wanted to repeat again, when we speak in English and when we speak in Chippewa language, we have an interesting thing to cover and be aware of. In English is a noun-based language, and all tribal languages are verb form-based languages. So right now, I have paper in front of me right now, and in English, it's called paper and it tells you what it is. But the Chippewa, it's a verb form-based language, and we call this Mazanaegan, which means the talking leaves or the leaves which speak, just to give you an idea of the difference between the noun-based and the verb form-based language. So what we're doing there right now is one of the things with Barbara Jersey's tribal people is that way back in the mid 1800s, when the building boom hit America and cities of Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, etc., were in desperate need of building products to build all of the households that were there. And as a result, all of the forests were being clear cut time and time again in vast areas. And one day, some of those developers went to the Menominee tribe. By the way, the Menominee tribe is about 40 miles slightly north and west of Green Bay, Wisconsin, just so you have an idea. And they have, well, we'll touch on that in a minute. But when the developers went to the tribal leadership and they asked if they could begin to clear cut, they were refused. They would not do it. And the elders went, we'll give you that tree, that tree, that tree, and not that tree, and we'll plant others as we go along. And as a result, they were eco-friendly, as we say today, back then. And today they have 250,000 acres of tribal lands that are all woodlands, some old growth, some new growth. And they're in an eco-friendly product loop right now. And as a result, they got called by Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, not so long ago. And I have the ticket that I went to when they revamped the Welch Ryan Arena in Evanston on Northwestern University campus. They spent $110 million to restore that facility. And the Northwestern Wildcats played their very first basketball game in the new facility on a basketball court used by the materials they got from the Menominee tribe in Wisconsin. And they're in that eco-friendly loop. They're not clear cutting, they're being selective about what they use and what you can use to create and improve your products. So that's kind of what's going on with that. A couple of other things. Now, maybe we can all kind of do this because we can always tell languages in various languages. speech is important, but sometimes we can explain things, especially to the Abanuji, the little ones, if we use stories with no words. And I have one, and it's called the rain story. And if you can join me with that, we'll do the rain story. And you put your hands out like this, and here's the calm before the storm. But off in the distance, we hear the thunderbirds, and they go, and comes the wind, and it gets closer and closer and closer and closer until it starts to clap. It gets heavier and heavier, and sometimes, and then you come back out of that. The wind blows it away, and the thunderbirds are gone, and that's the rain story. And the little ones really like to tell that story in that way. I told that story in Taiwan at a community college, and the back room was almost, or the back of the room was almost like the United Nations. There were all these little translation booths because we were with an international group and there were many translations going on. And when I was asked to tell a story, I did that. And about halfway through, I looked in the back row, and all of those translators are giving me the stink eye. He has no words. He just has all this stuff. So, but you don't always need words. You don't always need to write things down. You can, there are stories that have no words, but you still get things across and how the rain comes to your community. Just one other thing. A story that's told, if you ever go to a Halushka, which is the original name for powwow, to celebrate something, you will see something called the Wheel of Life, portrayed in a variety of ways. And I'll show you this one. If we can go to the next graphic, please. Okay, one more, please. There it is. That's the Wheel of Life. Look, that we had it there. And Mother Earth aches, and we know that she aches, but this is the Wheel of Life. And I will show you a color version in just a moment. But that's okay, you can drop out of that now because I'm going to show you what that really looks like and what it all means. Each of the four primary winds or directions from the north are for those Caucasian people who are caretakers of fire and take care of mental and intellectual things. On the east, we have the native people who are caretakers of the earth and are spiritual. On the west, we have people who are Mokade, people of the darker flesh, who are caretakers of the water and take care of physical things. And up again to the north are the white and caretakers of fire and mental things. If you can come back to me, I'm going to show you how that looks. If you might go to a powwow, or if you're dancing behind a well-dressed powwow person, there is the Wheel of Life. And you'll see that in a variety of forms all through Indian country. And you'll notice on this one, we have the green on the inside separating, and that stands for the earth, and the blue around it stands for the sky. So there we are up in that universe that we saw when we first sighted out it. And this is not uncommon. This is very, very common in Indian culture. And a couple of things that you should know. The term that's commonly used in Indian communities, and especially those who live on what they call the third coast, the Great Lakes. I like to think in those terms of the Great Lakes being the third coast. What we'll find is that there are moments when we have shakers, and we have shakers, and you'll hear we shake that shaker, and that's because it deals with the role of life, the circle of life on Earth. And as a result, we're really talking about how things can work and how it does work by people, about all of the elements that are within what we are composed of. And it's very, very, very important. I think that it's important to know that what we have done, a variety of things, as a result of attending the College of Lake County. By the way, I have a degree, just so you know, we're up near Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And that's where I graduated from the University of Wisconsin at Oshkosh with a degree in mass communications, radio, TV, film. So that's why I had positions in broadcasting and radio and television, either writing for or on the air, and helping our show win Emmy Awards. So as a result of that kind of background, I'm going to hold this up a little bit. I went to the National Advisory Council on Environmental Policy and Technology in Washington, D.C. to get on the Assumable Waters Subcommittee, Clean Water Act Section 404G1. And as a result of that, there's my worksheet. I was on there for 3 years. And as a result, we were rewriting some of the Clean Water Act of the 1970s under the Nixon administration and brought it forward, because what it has to do is the dredging and filling and the certification of the people who can do those things of the navigable waters of the United States and the protection of the lands on either side of those waters. So this was from my worksheet. We had a subcommittee of over 24 people from many states, many agencies. This is our final report. And basically what it was doing is, way back in the 1970s, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers were the only forces that could issue certificates that would enable organizations to go and do the dredging and filling of the waters of the United States. But they thought everyone would come running to their door and trying to do it, but nobody did. And today, only Michigan and New Jersey are the only states that do that type of thing. And so we rewrote the language from the Clean Water Act so that states with the capital S can be responsible for that duty, and the tribes themselves with the capital T can be responsible for the dredging and filling of these navigable waters through their lands, their sovereign nation lands. So that's what's going on right now. But it was passed, it was completed and forwarded through the head of the EPA during the Trump administration. And because of his lifestyle in that position, had to leave, but he did forward it through the EPA system before he left. And now we have a new person, Mr. Wheeler, who's the head of the EPA subcommittee in Washington, D.C., or committee in Washington, D.C. And find out that he was a lobbyist for the coal company. So I'm kind of questioning what might happen, but we've been sitting and waiting for a program to be reached of which they can contact the states and the tribes to tell them they can take on the responsibility of keeping these waterways clean and their lands on either side of them in good environmental condition. Now, there's a thing that happened. For those of you who are familiar with Northern Illinois, there's the Daily Herald newspaper. It's a suburban Chicago area newspaper. This came out on June 5th. And I'm not going to do a close-up of this, but I'll tell you basically short what this graph really means. And I keep saying that our mother, Akikwe, is aching because of what's going on. But they have a Chicago area precipitation history from March through May. And this spring's rainfall is the third lowest since records on it have been kept. It goes back to 1871 and all the way up to today. And in 1887, only 2.73 inches of rain fell from March through May in that year. In 1934, it was only 3.20 inches of rain. And 2021 is 3.75 inches of rain that have fallen. And the average is almost 10 inches of rain. So it's really, we've had a great loss of moisture for our precious woodlands and our marsh and our lakes and streams and things of that nature. So that's what's going on, or has been going on. And what I want to bring to your attention, I mentioned the verb form language that's present in the Chippewa culture. And this is called the Muzandagan. This is the Talking Leaves. And this is the publication that's put out on a quarterly basis by the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. And what's on here, for example, it's done by season, and you can get a free subscription. You don't have to pay a cent for this thing, and you don't have to be an Indian person. But we're talking about unearthing pipeline impacts, all eyes on the word, wild foods at your feet, this type of thing. We have, there's one with this thing about the wolves. The wolves were taken off the endangered species by the state of Wisconsin, and all the tribes got really upset because that's sacred to the Indian people. Here are people in winter doing rescue, teaching rescue operations of breaking through water and ice in the wintertime. And just so you know, if you really want a free subscription to Mosaic and the Leaves Which Speak, all you have to do is go to www.glifwc.org. And that's how you get Mosaic, and it'll be sent to your home free of charge. Don't have to do that. But one of the real good things is that at the beginning of every year, you will get what's known as a phenology calendar. It has the dates, it has the days, but it also has the days in which animals mate, when the little ones are born, all that, when flowers begin to bloom. And this is in northern Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. And so all of these, it's not just the dates, and it's not just all about us. This is one side, and I'll turn it to the other side. So you can learn about all of the animal people, the plant people, how they live, when they come according to this phenology calendar, and that comes with one of your publications to Mosaic, the free publication. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with right now. And again, we have tradition that lives on through, thanks to people like Edward Benton Begay, who really wanted everybody to know about the spirituality of the Native American Indian people. And I used to have a habit on my radio show, which originated from Chicago. By the way, Milwaukee, just north of us here, is, if you break it down, it means Minnow means good, and Aki means earth. So Minnow-Aki means good earth. It's a good place. And so that's how we used to pronounce it, but we didn't really have an L sound in our language, so Minnow-Aki became Milwaukee. And Chicago, Jikag is the Chippewa word for skunk. And I'm not telling a joke, but if you add a O at the end of Minnow and Jikag O, it becomes the skunk place, because there used to be acres of skunkweed patch down in that area. And that was the time all of the Chippewa, Potawatomi, and Ottawa people said, it's time to head north of the border and up into Wisconsin, because it was not a pleasant time, but it didn't make it a bad place. They would return and return and return until some of our early American presidents decided to have an Indian removal program, and they wanted to remove all. Andrew Jackson and President Monroe wanted to move all tribes east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi. And that's why there are so few tribes in the eastern section of the United States. And if you go to some of the states in Illinois, or excuse me, west of the Mississippi, you'll find that there are up to 30 tribes in some states. And actually the original tribes that were there just were about 2 or 3, but all of those tribes that got moved by those presidents to make room for the new people coming in from overseas, they had to put them somewhere, and they placed them in these new locations, especially in Oklahoma. If you go to Oklahoma, you'll see about 37, 38 tribes over there, and only 2 are really indigenous, the original people. So that's kind of what was going on way back when. I think what I would like to do is talk a little bit about our Creator placed a person, a human on earth called Anishinaabe. And what that translates to is from whence lowered the male of the species to enter life on earth. And that was the last 2-legged creature and the last of all the creatures, the plant people, the animal people, That was the last of all of the creatures that were put onto Earth by Gichi Manadu. Gichi means great, and Manadu means mystery or spirit or creator. And I think that, well, what we learned from them at that time is that the Earth is woman who gave birth to all living things. Water is life blood. It nourishes and purifies. And again, we went through all of those four sacred directions, but the common term for where we are in North America is Turtle Island. And if you hold up your, well, you don't have to hold it up, but just if you're going over in a high flying airplane or a satellite and look down on North America, Turtle Island can be seen as the right rear leg is Florida. The left rear leg is the California Peninsula. The tail is the Yucatan Peninsula. The body is the United States. And the Great Lakes are the lungs, and the paws, the front paws, left and right, and the head are up in Canada. And where they came from were the vast trade cycles and series places used to be many times ago when just the indigenous people were here trading with each other and essentially doing business. So I think that we have our four sacred directions, and the creator, Gichi Manadu, really wanted to do everything, but really had to award doing things to some of the spirits. So one of the jobs was to create the birds. The creator, our creator, wanted birds to be there, but he gave that job to the spirits, the angels, so to speak. And well, the birds spread the seeds of life in all directions. And well, and one of those who swim in water, plants, insects, crawling things, four-leggeds, on equal harmony. So we have elders who are still teaching things through language, through religious ceremonies. The first man named all things. The four seasons, kind of like Prometheus in a different culture. And what that first man noticed was that all things were pairs, but he was alone. And wolf became his first partner after he asked the creator for some company. And today we have our dogs of various kinds. So that was the beginning of our relationship with the four-leggeds, with us two-leggeds. And well, it was also told at that time that whatever happened to one, the wolf, or to the two-legged, would happen to the other, and that has happened. So therefore, there would be mating for life through a clan system, a tribe, it would be land, and well, it was a brotherhood between the wolf and the man, the original man up in here. There was a great flood because there was a loss of harmony, there was a loss of purification, and there was one big, huge log floating along, and as a result of nothing else but water. But a lot of other animals came and got onto this log with the first man. And as a result, they felt that if they could just dive down and get some soil and bring it up, the new world could be formed. So the loon dived down, couldn't reach the bottom. So did the hell diver, so did the mink, so did the otter, so did the turtle, so did the muskrat. And as a result, the muskrat went all the way down and was gone for a long time. And all the creatures on the log were really worried about little Robert, and they were laughing at him because they felt he couldn't accomplish anything, but he did, but he didn't survive. And when they brought muskrat to the log, they opened his paw and he found some of the soil from down to the bottom from the earth, from Mother Earth. And as a result, the four directions winds just came and blew like crazy. And we suddenly had the growth of soil, islands, lands, and the turtle became the foundation of the lands. So those are things. Now, a few more things. I think we're running over my time a little bit, but I think there are big things that we need to know about. And there was a point when this, where we are now, Akikwe, is that it was merely the dust of the universe. The Big Bang really happened 13.7 billion years ago. And several million years later, 4.3 to 3.7 billion years ago, Mars transferred its water to Earth and all that was with it. And as a result, the axis of Earth wound up with a 13-degree tilt, and that has affected our days, our hours, and our seasons. Glaciers had gouged out the basins of the Great Lakes, and Chicago 20,000 years ago had 3,000-foot high glaciers, 2 times Willis Tower. Today, the glaciers are pretty much only in Canada. A lot of people are saying that the original people came here from a land bridge from a different continent, and that's just a theory. That's the way it's always been issued. It's a theory. Also, the warmth of the last 100 years exceeds the last 115,000 years. The bridge is not one way. It said that the indigenous people from here went to Asia, went to the Middle East, went to Europe, etc. And the new people helped to create the greatest nations ever, and now have returned, so welcome home. However, one thing did change. The cultures back then were maternal societies. And as a result of going through these other continents, it changed to paternal. And again, largest city on earth was Cahokia, right here in Illinois, just outside of St. Louis. And US industrialization happened between 1865 and 1819 with smokestacks firing the air. And so as a result, we have the things like the Menominee tribal people saying, we're saving these woods for our future. We're not going to clear cut, even back in the mid 1800s. We have a significant change in the EPA perspectives. Right now, with that, what I was just showing you, I spent a year and a half rewriting the Clean Water Act so it would apply more to all states and more people and more active. We talked about the Illinois climate changes, and what you can do, I think, are very important, but a couple of other things. I'm going to take about 5 more minutes and then we'll switch. America's history is not devoid of Native American presence. It's just taught that way. The largest production of the textbooks in America comes from Texas, and Native Americans did not disappear in the 1880s. We have circular thinking versus linear thinking. You saw the medicine wheel concept. And just so you know, the Americas, North America, Central America, and South America in pre-Columbian times had a population of 120 million people. 20 million were in North America, but by 1900 census, only 250,000 remained in the United States, mainly from diseases that were brought in from other cultures. So, but the people are, empires may come and go, and the people are still here. So just so you know, the chief from the University of Illinois never existed. He was a fragment of the band director's imagination. And so there never was Chief Illinois. Again, the land bridge theory is a theory, and it's not a one-way bridge. So people did come across, but the native people from here did go across over to other countries. Now, in Wisconsin, you have the Menominee tribe, Ho-Chunk tribe, Chippewa tribe, Potawatomi tribe, Oneida, and Mohican, also known as the Stockbridge Munsee people. And when they speak their own language. We have 6 different tribal languages spoken in there besides English. So the what's really happening right now is that about 60% of all of the food that's consumed in the world came from the indigenous people here. Corn, very important, from here. Tomatoes didn't come on your pizza from Italy. It came from agriculturalists in Central America, indigenous people, and on and on. So the living close to the earth has benefited the world for a long time, but not many people really know about those type of things. So in the recent past, all tribes began, oh, by the way, I just wanted to share one thing. I think the King James Bible had a lot of changes in it. And I think that there's one word in there that really got changed. And that's the changing of stewardship in the practice of it to dominion over the earth. We went from stewardship to dominion, and I think that's made a big effort in the way we treat Akikwe, our Earth Mother, today. So in the past, tribes began as allies and trading partners in European model of relations between sovereign nations. Original official language. Does anyone know the original official language of the colonies in the United States? Wasn't English.
They're
It was
all
Spanish.
all muted, Jim.
Okay. So what happened back then, the French came to trade and buy into cultures. English, business only. Americans, control of all natural resources at any price. It's all about the land. In the past, Christopher Columbus, in his notes back to Spain and the Queen, talked about the people he had met, the friendly-handed people, as being endeos, godlike people, friendly people. So Indian was not from India. It came from Columbus saying that these people were endeos people. They were godlike, friendly people. So the skeletal structure of the Declaration of Independence and Democracy came from the Iroquois Confederacy's Great White Roots of Peace. Unfortunately, it's a document which still describes the original authors as savages. And the smart talking shows that we see on our cable television today, if something happens from one culture to another that's nasty, it's always described as being tribal. Tribal is just the opposite. They're endeos, they're godlike, peaceful people. So that's some of what we're dealing with right now. If we have more time, I'll take it, but if not, we can always do more of this later on. Shall I continue, or should we do this later?
So we're at 7:25. And the program was supposed to end at 7:30. Do you know how much more time for the presentation?
Not very much. I can probably do it within that time, if that's okay with you.
Okay, yeah, and I guess we can do questions afterwards.
And we don't
Okay.
have a lot of questions there, so.
Okay. What happened in the past, there were treaties that were signed between the United States government and tribal governments, and there were 805 of them. By the way, there's 562 tribes in the United States right now. You think the G7's got problems? Tribes traveling Indian country. But there were 805 treaties that were signed by the government in the past with tribal governments, and only 325 have been upheld to date. There's no due diligence involved, and well, there's no Marshall Plan. There were policies and wars to settle the Indian problem, quote unquote. So right now, we did talk about assimilation. My grandfather was sent to a boarding school to learn to be more American rather than American Indian. And he was not a citizen as a Chippewa, but he and his buddies did, and they became soldiers in World War I, and they became heroes in the Red Arrow Division. And then back in those days when the generals looked at the frontline maps, and here's our guys on that side, this side, and here are the Germans on that side. If you broke through the enemy lines, they marked it with the Red Arrow. There were so many breakthroughs that they became known as the Red Arrow Division. And many of those members of the 32nd Division were Native American people who were not yet citizens until 1924. If you drive from Illinois, cross the Wisconsin border, and take Highway 32, a federal highway, you will see a small red arrow on that sign going all the way through Wisconsin, all the way up to the Michigan border as a tribute to what the men and women of the 32nd Division, the Wisconsin 32nd Division, accomplished in World Wars I and II, and my grandfather was one of those people. Even though he was taken from his family and his home when he was a young man, and stayed there until he was about 18 years old, and came back and fought in the United States Army, even though he was not a citizen. So that was one thing. In 1934, the federal government implied the Indian Resort Organization Act, which established farmsteads, farming, and tax tables rather than having a democratic government government replaced the clan system. And so again, my uncle Edward, he fought in World War II in the Philippines. And he became the head of the a big Army citizen organization in Wisconsin. And I think that Barbara Jersey, who was just here a moment ago for the Menominee Nation, they abdicated Indian children and sent them away to boarding schools to learn to become American citizens who just knew pretty much only English. And finally, that was broken down in the 1970s. And President Truman and the Children's Welfare League of America much apologized for what they did for taking those children away from their families. Tribes were reduced in numbers by some 40% during that era by the loss of their young people. So I think what's happening right now, we now have the ICWA, the Native American Religious Freedom Act, which was forbidden for a while. And we have the National American Grave and Protection Sacred Sites Act. Before, they were just kind of taken, and no one really cared about those things. So those are things that we've talked about. And by the way, urban versus reservation health. In 2009, the city of Chicago recognized Native Americans as a minority for the first time in its history. So the skunk place got serious about Indian people, and the oldest urban Indian center in the United States is in Chicago. So that's pretty much it. And I guess we have to remember that we, all of us, are not the end product. We need to be friendly with the four-leggeds, those who fly, those who walk, those who swim, those who hop around. And we also have to come to know the difference between charity and social justice. Big stuff. So there are many, many books, and I can send you lists of books for you to consider if this is of interest to you. And from that, your environmental resources from our part of our lookout, the Midwest Alliance of Sovereign Tribes, which are massed, and those are the 35 tribes that call the Great Lakes home, and they desperately want to protect the Great Lakes. We also have the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, which is part of that publication I showed you, that you can get their publication quarterly, no charge, it's free, they'll send it to you. Also, the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin, which is located on the southwest side of Milwaukee in the Hales Corners, Wisconsin. Also, non-Indian organizations, you have the Aquatic Plant Management, the Illinois Lakes Management Association, the Lindenhurst Lakes Commission, the Lake County Health Department report, and the Land Conservancy of Lake County. So these are all organizations that can help you, help Akikwe, who is sore, she aches, she's not like she was in the past, and she does need everybody's help, whether they're indigenous. And if you're Native American, well, you can be born here and you're Native American. You can also be American Indian and be a tribal citizen and practice the indigenous way of thinking about things. So with that, I will turn it back to you, and I will say Gigo Abamen Menoa. We have a formal language and we have a street language. So that means I hope to see you all once again. In everyday language, we just say later. Kichimewich. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. Oops, the PowerPoint's up. But oops.
That was some of Jim's, let me get that back up.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Some
but thank you so much.
Sources he was sharing at the end there.
Oh, perfect.
Great.
It was very enriching to listen to your knowledge and wisdom regarding traditional ecological knowledge and the environment. And we really appreciate your perspective and how you shared that there are many misconceptions about the history, knowledge, and experience of Indigenous people. In order to uphold equity in the environmental movement, we must actively educate ourselves. And that also means during our free time. We wanted to host this event so we can make this information accessible to our local environmental community, but we must also recognize that it's also on us personally to educate ourselves on how we can assist historically underserved groups. And for that reason, I appreciate that Jim brought up what the residential schools, because it's important for all of us to recognize what recently happened in Canada and how they discovered hundreds of graves of Indigenous children, and how now our Deb Holland will lead initiatives locally to identify and investigate the schools here. And we must reckon with this past. We must make amends and establish reparations for the devastation that the US has perpetuated on Indigenous communities and continues to perpetuate, especially through environmental justice and lack of resources. And we must also recognize how this is also happening at the border with Indigenous communities that are being held in the perpetuation of residential camps, but detention camps by another name. And so the Sierra Club is committed to recognizing how environmental justice is intricately connected to social justice, guided by the same exploitative forces. And for that reason, the membership committee recognizes and values how Indigenous people are still here. This is their land, and that they have been protecting our environment since before our people, everyone else's people, were here. And so we are committed to bringing more diverse perspectives on environmental knowledge, how environmental knowledge is produced and shared. And we will be hosting additional presentations, sharing more of these diverse perspectives. And hopefully we can get Jim to speak again, maybe more in depth into one of the topics he shared. But now we will open it up to questions.
So for starters, we've got a couple here. What are Jim's thoughts on carbon credit markets, where dollars are invested in forest lands to capture and keep carbon in the forests? A smart program or capitalist exploitation in another form? Are you familiar with that, Jim?
I think it's, yes, I am. And in fact, some of those credits get sold or transferred to other organizations and other communities as well. So it's just not going away. It's not ever going to wear out, that type of thing. So no, I just think it's something that is not adding to what we breathe every day. And I think that we need to be careful, and we need to be telling, well, some of our folks out in Washington. By the way, I have spent a lot of time in Washington, just so you know. And I noticed just recently that in Illinois, there's an extraordinary large use of the word awesome. Everything is awesome. But what I found, and to me, was something wonderful and terrific. But if you go to Washington, D.C., awesome means just the opposite. So if someone thinks that they're being fed a line of bologna sausage, people there go, awesome, very interesting, let me get back to you. So that's how that works out there. But no one around here knows that, so you can use it any way you want. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I think it's something that's contributing to the poor quality of what we're breathing every day, what all the other creatures are living in, and how we're taking care of them, or if we can. We're having a hard time doing it. So I really need to see that this is being controlled better, and maybe someday it just won't be necessary at all.
Another one I have, Jim, do you have a reference list for some of the books that you can share with us? If you can share them with me, I can send them out with the video afterwards to our registrants.
Sure, I'd be delighted to do that. I don't have one with me right now, but I can prepare one that would be usable for you. Sure, absolutely.
Wonderful.
I have a question. How can local environmentalists support environmental or Indigenous priorities, Indigenous environmental work? How can local environmentalists make the connection and prioritize what these communities are working?
Well, one way to do it around here would be to go to the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, which is headquartered on my reservation, the Bad River Chippewa Indian Reservation in northern Wisconsin, up in Odena, Wisconsin. But the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife is responsible for the lands up in upper Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And as a result, we're dealing with all of these different factors, all those who fly, those who walk, those who swim, those who crawl. It's just on, and they have a lot of resources. So you could support someone like, as we say, Glyphwick, and I'll send you information on that with the book list that I will send to you as well.
Very good. I think that's all we have for questions.
You know what? I have a couple of things.
By the way, just
Oh, pardon me. There was somebody who,
It's okay.
let's see, the same, Margaret Miser wants to say, the same Lac Courte d'Oreille Anishinaabe is offering teachings and ceremony for men and women August 1st through 5th, and she has a link here. We would welcome you all. We knew Edward Benton well. So I'm going to put that in the chat to everybody. I think some of them might have been directed to me. Let's see. We have a lot of thanks here. They asked for a list of the resources. Someone mentioned, Kira wants to know, you mentioned an organization that was about the spiritual aspects of Native Americans. And what was the name of that organization?
That was the Medewan, and that's the Grand Medicine Lodge of the Chippewa Nation. Very strong and very, very lengthy in years and practice, and very strong. There was a time when the American Indian movement took action because things were kind of not quite hanging in the way they used to. And so the Medewan, the Grand Medicine Lodge of the Chippewa Nation, is much stronger today than it had been for a while. And the elders are there, and the women are very strong in their culture. And can I share one quick poem?
Sure.
That relates to many of the people.
Of course.
It's
Can
called
the name of it is Grand Medicine Lodge of the Chippewa Nation. Was there a word before that?
The Medewan.
Oh,
Medewan.
W-I-N. M-E-D. M-A-D.
W-I.
A-D.
That's good.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat for people. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
I noticed earlier when we were together talking before this event began, I felt outnumbered because I think I was the only guy here. But then I felt like I was back up on the reservation because the women have a lot of clout. And this woman, Sue Erickson, wrote this back in 1994, but it's still appropriate today because it deals with Nibi, with our water. And Nibi speaks, and it's Anishinaabe, the daughters. You are keepers of the water. I am Nibi, water, the sacred source, the blood of Aki, Mother Earth, the force filling dry seeds to green bursting. I am the womb's cradle, I purify. Nibi, the life giver, forever the circle's charge. I have cursed through our mother's veins. Now hear my sorrow and my pain in the rivers rush, the rain. I am your grandchildren's drink. Listen, daughters, always, you are keepers of the water. Hear my cry, for the springs flow darkly now through the heart of Aki. So please, Aki Kwe is aching, she is sore, and she needs your help.
That's beautiful. I have another one here from Sherry Latash. Robin Wall Kimmerer's two books, Braiding Sweetgrass and Gathering Moss, are lyrical and inspiring. Are there any programs or camps for adults to gain more knowledge and firsthand experiences about indigenous use of natural resources?
Yeah, if you go and get that free publication subscription to the Medewan, there will always be information on events like that. And this is a good source to go to for information about that type of thing.
Okay, so that's that Medewan Grand Medicine Lodge of the Chippewa Nation?
No, this is the Talking Leaves. That's
Oh.
what Medea means. If you get this publication, there will be information within this publication that will help you answer your question about sources you can go to.
Okay, Gloria, maybe you can get that later and send it out to people.
We'll get a list from Jim. Yes. I have another question here. I'm not sure if there's time for this. Gail says, what is happening concerning the fight against fossil fuels in northern Wisconsin?
There's been a lot of good things happening because many of the battles are being won by the tribes. And for example, but the Bad River, by the way, let me just tell you, Nindajanakaz, Mang de Wegve, Mashkazibi, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Ashkanagan, and Hansodena and Dunjaba. And we're polite people, and I was impolite at the beginning, but Nindajanakaz, Mang de Wegve, my name is Loon, he flies fast. Mashkazibi, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Ashkanagan. I'm of the Bad River, I'm a citizen of the Bad River Chippewa Indian Reservation. It's called Bad River, but Mashkazibi means marsh river in our language. It's the new people who came and found that living on a floodplain was made it a bad river. And Haines-Odena and Dunjaba is Haynesville is where I come from in Illinois. So just south of the Wisconsin border. So that will give you, anyhow, that's kind of what's happening. So I'm familiar with the ways, and I also went to parochial grade schools, and I did go to Pope Pius XI High School in Milwaukee. So not only am I familiar with the Mediaean Lodge, but I'm familiar with Christianity. So I respect them both. That's how I handle it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Of course it does. I do have one more here that Katja brought up earlier. You know, Jim, sometimes people on their emails or on letters, they will include a notation of what Indian tribes owned the land, lived on the land before we came. And so Kelly Cartwright is asking if you could create a land, they call it a land acknowledgement, demonstrating the people who were originally in Lake County, and then send it out to the people who registered for the workshop. So if you and
Sure.
Gloria
In fact,
put that together.
On the back of, okay, I'll be glad to. I think on the back of every Mesonean publication is a map that shows you where the tribes are now, the little red dots, and all the lands that they ceded to the United States government by year back in the 1800s all the way forward. So that's just on every issue. And that's more contemporary, but yeah, I can share that information with you.
Thank you. I think that's, Gloria, do you see the one from John Wasik there? John Wasik is one of our county board members and Lake County Forest Preserve.
Yeah.
Asking.
Yeah, you go ahead, because they're coming to us individually, the questions.
What's happening, yeah. How can the Forest Preserve of Lake County, that would be then, better work with the indigenous community?
One way to begin would be to go to the American Indian Center in Chicago. And they have access to many different tribes through their members who live in Chicago, but come from tribes up in Wisconsin or Minnesota or Michigan or Iowa, that type of thing. And it's the oldest urban Indian center in the United States. If you want, I can add my list of things, books and things of that nature. Contact that you might want to make up in the tribes up north, but the Great Lakes Intertribal Fish and Wildlife Commission, that would be a great place to go because they cover a big chunk of the Great Lakes in not just one state, and they can probably help you as well as anybody.
Okay. Gloria, do you have some directly to you? Or Katja?
That's it for me here.
Okay. I'm done. Katja, take her home.
Yeah, I think we are done. Thank you, Jim, so much for your time. Thank you everyone for being here. And the event was recorded, so we will share it so you can watch it again if you want to take more notes. And Jim, we may ask you again to come speak on more specifics. But yeah, everyone, yeah, we can clap for Jim right now.
Well, you know what? I'm
Been an
gonna
honor.
ask them all to unmute so he can hear our claps.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Wonderful presentation.
Big thanks.
Yeah, and that wraps up our event.
I will stop the recording now.